Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Snowflakes and Stockings, a Wilton Hills Christmas Book 4 by Marianne Rice, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Liberty Johnson hovered her fingers over her mouse pad and clicked on the next name on her list. Sawyer Campbell. He didn't fit the profile, but that's what made him even more alluring. He'd made the final 3 in her investigation, and he'd been the hardest to research. She expected to find more stories on the man who was vice president of Campbell Tech. His father, Robert Campbell, was the president, but according to the degrees and the accolades, Sawyer was as competent as his father to run the company, and his position wasn't just due to family loyalty. It was almost as if they weren't related. The articles on Campbell Tech were strictly professional and 100% complimentary. Based out of Portland, they provided services for Fortune 500 companies all over the world. Little personal information was available on the Campbell men, making her job more challenging. But that didn't mean they couldn't be who she'd been looking for. It made Liberty more suspicious that they were exactly the men behind the biggest, most secretive acts in the history of Maine. Okay, Liberty's dramatics may be a little over the top, but she could taste this story. She was so close to cracking the case. Getting the job as an investigative reporter for the highest-rated news station in southern Maine had been her goal. Portland was a big city for Maine, and working at Channel 4 News was a dream come true. WLTN had been good to her for the past 11 years, since hiring her fresh out of college and eager to report. The story had been picked up by the Associated Press and shared every Christmas Day on national news for the past 5 years, and no journalist had come close to solving the mystery. It was happening in her state. Last year it touched her hometown. This year, she would finally discover the identity of the man who had been giving over $100,000 a year to children and needy families and claiming to be Santa Claus. Sawyer scrubbed his hands across his face before dropping his head against the back of his chair. The projections for the last quarter of the fiscal year were looking solid, but that was also meant more work, more projects, and not enough personnel. Working 10-hour days, 7 days a week for the past month was taking its toll on him. Not that he was complaining too much. He and his father had grown Campbell Technologies into an impressive enterprise, providing many high-paying jobs to Mainers. The Portland area was up and coming, but the best techs preferred to work out of glamorous cities like Boston, New York, or Los Angeles. Funny thing was, they could do their job from pretty much anywhere. He had a crew who traveled a few months out of the year to work with some of their biggest clients, but mostly he and his employees could work from the office in Maine or the comfort of their homes. Mr. Campbell, Adam Morris, his rock-starving administrative assistant, tapped on the door to his office before coming in. Hey, Adam, please don't tell me I have a meeting I forgot about. This week has been 10 hours too long already. And on that note, what are you still doing here? I thought I told you to go home hours ago. You didn't forget a meeting. Adam glanced over his shoulder in an uncharacteristically nervous gesture. What is it? Sawyer leaned forward on his elbows and studied his assistant. Underneath the perfectly starched button-down shirt and pressed khakis, and behind the clean-cut hairstyle and trendy glasses, was a man who loved to hike, ski, and go whitewater rafting. The quintessential outdoorsman, he made Sawyer feel even guiltier for keeping him holed up in an office for 50 hours a week. And then some. There's, someone here to see you. She's hoping for an interview? Shouldn't she meet with human resources? We don't have any openings in upper management. Those were the only interviews he sat in on these days. His HR department was amazing at calling out the deadbeats and hiring qualified candidates for all other areas of the company. The competitive salary and benefit packages Campbell Tech offered brought them more applicants than they could hire, but it also meant more underqualified applicants wanting a piece of the pie. Not a job interview, a news interview. News? For what? He glanced out the windows of his corner office. The trees had started to turn from green to orange and yellow. There weren't many trees visible from his view, mostly ocean and the rooftops of other Portland buildings, but the green islands in Casco Bay were turning with the chilly nights and sunny days. The changing leaves were the only thing newsworthy he could think of at the moment. While there was a lot going on within his company, it wasn't anything the general population would want to hear about while eating their Friday night dinner. Sawyer glanced at the massive clock on his wall, a gift from a local craftsman 4 years ago, a thank you for donating so much to the community. It was nearing 7:30, well past the evening news hour. What the heck does a news reporter want with me on a Friday night? Sir, she says she's doing research for a philanthropy piece WLTN plans on airing soon. She's called a few times to schedule a meeting during the day, but your schedule has been booked for weeks. I may have jokingly said the best time to get you would be well on a Friday night. Sawyer stared at Adam, wanting to scold him for insinuating he had no life, but Adam's statement to the journalist was 100% accurate. If you don't mind me overstepping my boundaries, Mr. Campbell. Adam, when have I ever stopped you from speaking your mind? He chuckled. Heck, even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to stop you. Even though they were approximately the same age, Adam was more like an older brother looking out for Sawyer. Adam made sure he ate, kept up his water intake, and encouraged him to make use of the company gym when he felt Sawyer needed to let off some steam. I mean no disrespect, Mr. You can call me Sawyer, you know that. I appreciate your professionalism in front of clients and even in front of other employees, but when it's just us, you can consider me a friend. Over the past year, he'd had enough casual meals and honest conversations with Adam to think of him as a friend. Recently, they'd even started joking around after hours, but Adam was all seriousness during the job. There weren't many friends in Sawyer's life, no time for them. With every passing year, he found himself turning more and more into his father. Not that Robert Campbell wasn't a bad guy. He was well liked and respected, but he didn't have friends. He'd never been the kind of guy to hang out in the backyard, a beer in one hand, a spatula in the other, while flipping burgers for a crowd. Mr. Campbell, Adam cleared his throat, looking over his shoulder again. Miss Liberty Johnson was quite insistent that she meet with you tonight, deadlines and all. He rolled his eyes and waved his hand in the air. I can appreciate the pressure of deadlines. I as well. Adam's lip twitched before he took a step closer to Sawyer's desk. He lowered his voice and folded his hands in front of him. Sir. Sawyer. Sir Adam? Sawyer chuckled. You're good for the ego, but you're going to make my head so big I won't be able to fit through the door. I'm glad to see you in a good mood despite the stressful work week, which brings me to my point. Point? I thought you were here to tell me I have an interview with a journalist. I think it would be good for you to meet with her, Sawyer, but you also haven't eaten since the breakfast sandwich I made you eat at 11 this morning, which is why I made reservations at Noodle. A dinner interview was the only way I'd approve of your meeting. Sawyer cringed at the challenge of Thai food. I really don't want a camera on me while I eat, especially since I'm not the greatest with chopsticks. There's no camera crew, just Miss Liberty Johnson. She said she's collecting information now, writing up a story, and will do the camera interview at a later date. And this is for philanthropy? I'm no philanthropist. We donate money to charitable causes. It's an excellent tax write-off. With all due respect, you and Campbell Technologies do much more than that. They did. He did, but he didn't need a pat on the back for it. Building mainframes, servers, and all things IT were his father's specialty, while Sawyer led the network, email systems, security trainings, and development end of the business. The boom in technology needs and support the past few decades had ensured their company and their employees a solid financial future, and they gave back to the community in a multitude of ways. Sawyer leaned back in his chair as his stomach rumbled. Adam's right eyebrow inched up, and he gave Sawyer an I-told-you-so smirk. Letting out a long sigh, Sawyer pushed himself to his feet, unrolling his shirt sleeves and buttoning the cuffs before slipping into his suit coat. Adam scrunched his nose. What? Lose the coat. I always wear a coat. It's nearly 8 on a Friday night. Relax a little. In fact, Adam tipped up his chin. Lose the tie as well. What's with the fashion advice, Mom? I'm just suggesting you loosen up a little for your interview. You think I'm a stuffed shirt? He slipped out of the suit jacket and draped it over the arm of his chair. It wasn't like he could claim to be the life of the party, but was he really a boring dud? Over the course of 6 years I've worked for you, I've seen you turn more serious. You're a lot like your father, I suppose. Sawyer closed his eyes and lowered his chin to his chest. Awesome. So you do think I'm boring. No, I think you work too hard and don't spend enough time taking care of yourself. As your administrative assistant, it's my job to look out for you. I respectfully disagree. It would take me all night to list everything you do around here, and taking care of me isn't on the list. I apologize if I overstepped. It was Adam's turn to drop his chin. No, if anyone should be apologizing, it's me. I respect you for your honesty, and I appreciate you looking out for me. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't eat, wouldn't exercise, and probably would never leave this place. like his father, which was what drove his parents apart, according to his aunt. Not that his parents fought, they'd have to see each other for that to happen. But according to Aunt Jackie, his parents were full of love and laughter early on, before the event that Sawyer was never allowed to ask about. Sawyer could understand why his father filled his every waking minute with work and why his mother opened up capers when he was only 8. It was their way to escape their loss, but in doing so they left Sawyer alone, emotionally. He had no reason to live his life the same way. However, there was no one at home waiting for him. He hadn't been out on a date since. He had no idea. Adam would know. Sawyer was about to ask him when a feminine voice cleared her throat and tapped on the open door to his office. "Excuse me for interrupting. I wanted to make sure you didn't accidentally forget I was still waiting to meet with Mr. Campbell." Adam's body blocked Sawyer from seeing the woman. Adam raised a brow and made a gesture at his neck like he was loosening his tie. Sawyer looked down at his black and gray striped tie and then back at Adam. Rolling his eyes, he loosened the knot. Adam stepped to the side. "Mr. Campbell, this is Liberty Johnson from WLTN." Sawyer looked up, his tie still around his neck, and froze. It wasn't her gray sweater that looked to be as soft as cashmere that caught his eye, but the smile that lit up the entire room that froze him in place. Her lips were a soft pink, and her teeth white and straight as she sent the most perfect smile in Sawyer's direction. He let his gaze travel a few inches north, and his knees nearly buckled at the warmth in her eyes. A light brown, maybe hazel. It was hard to tell from across the room, but they were big and expressive. Brown waves of hair that looked to be touched by the sun framed her face. "Thank you for making time for me in your schedule. You're a busy man, according to Mr. Sawyer." According to Mr. Morris. Sawyer liked that she referred to Adam as such and not as his assistant or, worse, secretary. Adam was, but most people snubbed their nose at the word, and a man who would fill such a role. Little did they know, Adam was more educated, intelligent, and had a better work ethic than anyone he'd ever worked with. "If you don't mind, Miss Johnson," Adam said, saving Sawyer by giving him more time to formulate words without sounding like an idiot, "Mr. Campbell has reservations at Noodle down the road. He's been at his desk for the past 11 hours. The only way we could squeeze you in was during dinner. Your meal will be paid for by Campbell Technologies." "Oh my gosh, I love Noodle, and I haven't eaten all day either. I swear if it wasn't for my camera crew or for Lizzie, the assistant manager at the station, I'd go days without eating." "No, that's not entirely true." She waved her hand through the air as she laughed. "My family wouldn't allow that. It seems every week we have a gathering that involves copious amounts of food. Anyway, I digress. I apologize. A dinner meeting is perfect." Sawyer nodded and reached for his suit jacket. Adam gave him a curt shake of the head, then eyed the tie still knotted around Sawyer's neck. It had been too long since he'd been out to dinner with a woman, and definitely never with a woman as beautiful as Liberty Johnson. "Are you okay with me interviewing you during dinner, Mr. Campbell?" He realized he hadn't said a word since Liberty stepped into his office. Ignoring Adam's disapproving frown, he slipped on his suit jacket and discreetly loosened his tie. "Absolutely. I appreciate you willing to meet so late. I apologize my schedule has been so hectic, and I couldn't fit you in at another time. I'm sure spending your Friday night working isn't your idea of a good time." Adam snickered as he left the office, and Sawyer would bet money that his assistant knew exactly what he was doing by arranging a Friday night dinner meeting with the lovely Miss Johnson. He dropped a quick glance at her ring finger. Just because she wore no jewelry on her finger didn't mean she was available. "Noodle is right around the corner. I haven't been outside since 6 this morning. Is it too cold to walk, or would you rather drive?" "Oh, walking is perfect." She adjusted the strap to her laptop bag on her shoulder. "You sure you can in those?" He tipped his head toward her feet, where she wore a pair of tall gray boots with heels that gave her an extra 3 inches of height, bringing her to only a little shorter than his 6 feet. "These old things? No problem." "Okay, then." He took one final scan of his office, not bothering to pack up his laptop. He had another at home he could work on later tonight. Patting his pants pocket, checking on his wallet and phone, he held out his hand toward the door. "Shall we?" Then walked side by side toward the elevator, her spicy vanilla scent filling the space around them. Once outside, he loosened his tie and then slipped it off, tucking it into his suit pocket. Banishing thoughts of the interview, Sawyer pretended he was going to dinner with a beautiful woman.